Good evening, and thank you for joining us here at Montreat Presbyterian Church for tonight's edition of Montreat Wednesday. This is the second of a two-part series in which we are looking in on some of the people and organizations who are doing crucial work in the Swannanoa Valley region, and especially ones who have had to make significant adjustments to the way they carry out their work in ministry in order to meet the needs of their ministry area in the time of pandemic. We start off tonight hearing from the Donald S. Collins Early Learning Center, formerly Children and Friends, with two very familiar faces in the Montreat Presbyterian Church and wider community, and that is former board chair Linda Hobson speaking with current board member Carice Gambrell. We're looking forward to hearing the update from the Collins Learning Center. Then we'll hear from Jasmine Beach Ferrara, who as a Buncombe County Commissioner chairs the Early Childhood Education and Development Committee and serves on the Justice Resource Advisory Council. She focuses on policies that help create a community where every child can thrive and where people feel a sense of belonging and can live up to their full potential. Her district seat encompasses the Swannanoa Valley. Jasmine Beach Ferrara is also a minister in the United Church of Christ and the founding executive director of the Campaign for Southern Equality. Finally, we'll hear from our good friend Cheryl Wilson, executive director of the Swannanoa Valley Christian Ministry. Cheryl will update us on the crucial ministries that continue to take place at SVCM and has always let us know how they've had to pivot in order to meet these very unusual needs of our current time. So let's bow together and we'll get right to it. O God, feed us on your good news, that we may be equipped to feed your world. Amen. Take it away, Linda and Carice.
Good afternoon to Montreat Wednesday. My name is Carice Gambrell. My husband Bob and I are supporting members of the Montreat congregation. And today, along with Linda Hobson, we are going to tell you about the Collins Center, what is going on normally at the Collins Center and how the Collins Center has faced changes during the COVID-19 pandemic. There have been challenges, there have been changes for the Collins Center. The Donald S. Collins Early Learning Center is officially the Swannanoa Valley Child Care Council. Formerly, it was known as Children and Friends, and it's sometimes difficult for some of us to stop using that terminology. As the Swannanoa Valley Child Care Council, the organization was founded in 1979. It was founded by Church Women United to serve working families in the Swannanoa Valley. And we still continue the desires, the wishes, the ideas of our founders, because we still serve 70% of our children are from families that qualify because of their income levels for vouchers for assistance for child care. We are a nonprofit, a 501(c)(3), and Jim, who is pictured there on the right, was one of the founders. As Children and Friends, we have been at various locations. We've been at First Baptist Church, we've been at Christ Mount, we've been at the Carver Center, and our most recent location was US 70. During the COVID pandemic, the Collins Center made changes that would be wonderful and remarkable at any time, but especially so during the pandemic. We moved from our location on busy US 70 to a quiet, tree-shaded area behind First Baptist Church on Montreat Road, and First Baptist does lease us that property. We moved from an old building that flooded with every heavy rain to a brand new building. We moved from an interior that had been modified to meet children's needs, from an interior that with every flood, every bit of water damage had to be meticulously cleaned, to a brand new building with brand new furnishings and a building that was designed for children. This transformation, this transition was made possible by a lot of generous contributions, donations from the Montreat Presbyterian Church and from many members who made individual contributions, from the Black Mountain Kiwanis Club and the Black Mountain Rotary Club, from the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, the Western North Carolina Bridge Foundation, and the Cannon Foundation. Linda's going to tell you about what goes on normally in our classrooms and how things are done so wonderfully in our brand new building and brand new setting.
Any day, the Collins Center is open for children from 7 to 5:30. And any day that you come to the center, you will hear the sounds of very happy children engaged in classrooms with qualified teachers and appropriate ratio of student to teacher is always observed. In the infant room, we accept children at age 6 weeks up to 1 year. The teachers work on activities with them to promote developmental milestones. They work to develop personal relationships with each infant. Teachers openly communicate with parents about changes in their infant's diet and health. Breastfeeding is always welcomed as we promote physical and emotional bonding between the mother and the child. The Wadler Room are children who are mobile, age 1 to age 2. This classroom encourages activities to develop fine and gross motor skills as the children mature into active toddlers. They learn to drink from cups and feed themselves. In these pictures, you can see explorations of children reading, having books in their hands and exploring what reading might be. Our toddler classrooms encourage and nurture children ages 1 to younger 2s. They develop social skills at this age. They can learn through social interactions and purposeful play. Children learn to listen to instructions and solve problems for themselves. Our 2-year-old classroom is a place of lots of activity. Children are learning to work together to complete a task. They begin taking steps for potty training and working towards being independent. Teachers nurture and promote self-help skills and incorporate these into play. You'll see lots of dress up going on. Dolls and dramatic play items help to boost their skills. Children begin learning their colors, counting, and exploring aspects of nature as they begin to talk. And here is an example of one of our 2-year-olds who is emulating something that she's seen many times in her own home, feeding a baby. 3s and 4s are into playing and singing and learning physical development that is important for reading and writing skills, their eye-to-hand coordination, their social emotional development, group communications. This is continued on as they become 4s. In the pre-K room, children are developing pre-writing skills. They're learning in groups what it means to take your turn to speak. They are constantly on the go with lots of enthusiasm for exploration. Due to COVID, one of the classrooms that the Collins Center added was a virtual classroom for elementary children, kindergarten through second grade. And this has proven to be very special and important for families, working families who could not work with the schedule, the AB schedule. It continues. We have a certified teacher that works with the virtual classroom. They are engaged with their iPads in their Zoom meetings when they are coming, and then there are other things that go on. One mother quipped this week that her kindergarten student was learning lots of vocabulary from the older children. I recently got to visit that outside that classroom and look in, and it was a classic classroom with every child engaged on their iPad or in meaningful exploration of materials in the classroom. To get this classroom started, it had to be approved by the school board, so we worked very closely with classroom teachers and the principals at Black Mountain Elementary as well as W.D. Williams. And there are children in this classroom from a variety of different schools. So our teacher works with the classroom teacher to make sure the children get the best possible benefit. One of the neatest things about the safety features of the Collins Center is it is truly state-of-the-art. The center has a wraparound deck with outside doors to access the playground. The doors allow for parents to come directly to their classroom, to the classroom of their child, which has proven to be very good during the pandemic because this allows parents to see the classroom and communicate safely with children, but not go into the building. Some of the safety features of the Collins Center are the front doors are always locked. Parents and staff have a code which they can punch into the keypad. It will record everyone who enters the building. The fire panel can communicate directly with the fire department, and the fire marshal who did the inspection of the building told me that he was impressed that the whole building was synchronized. So if one smoke alarm goes off in one part of the building, they're all going to go off. Another nice feature about the safety features is the fact that the PA system can be used to make safety announcements to everybody in the building. And with 10,000 square feet and 14 classrooms, that's a very good feature to have. The playground is a work in progress at this point. The playground is to be a back to nature playground, which means that natural things or textures, sensory activities, natural sounds, fine and gross motor skills can all be done with materials other than a lot of metal and plastic. At this point, the playground, all of the bike paths have been put down. There is an area for young children, toddlers, infants, with a rubberized pad. And what makes this infant area so exciting is the fact that it is truly designed for infants and waddlers as they are learning to walk. There are areas where they can, knobs that they can pull up on to stand. The sod, part of the sod is down, and the rest is to come. In this picture, you can see there will be some of the things to come in the future. embedded slides. We have those under construction right now. Wooden stumps for stepping stones. The bike track pack is just about finished. Different nature ground covers are used, mulch, grass, sand, etc. There will be a mud kitchen, shaded sandboxes, and a dramatic play area. All very exciting. Thanks to Jeannie Sullivan and a number of people, our landscaping is just about done. We appreciate everyone who donated to help with this landscaping, and it certainly does enhance the beauty of the Midland Avenue area.
So we want to tell you a little bit in response to the questions that Mason Blake sent us, how the pandemic affected us. The first was just the fact that we were able to move. Our building construction was completed. The company that built our buildings in Georgia, Mobile Modular, did not close, as did other companies. So we were able to get the buildings here, we were able to get them in place, and we were able to provide a lot of entertainment. I don't know how many of you made it a daily practice to go by and see what had happened today as the buildings were moving in, but we certainly did. We had a lot of volunteer assistance on various levels during the move. On the left, you see a photo of one board member and two spouses of board members, Tom Cannon, Bob Gambrell, and Bob Tuttle. They're installing, they're installing the fencing under the deck to keep the children from crawling under the deck when they're on the playground. And then on the right, you see two board members who just retired. That would be Linda Hobson and John DeWitt. They extended their board terms over the 6 years to help us with the transition. And John and Linda are not only skilled in assembling office furniture, which is what you see there, but they literally spent months over the past few months overseeing the whole process, signing documents, seeing that inspections were carried out, seeing that all the goals were met, seeing that all the requirements were met, and physically helping the move into the new building. Here's Tom Cannon again, using a backhoe to dismantle the playground at our former site. That had to be done before we could turn the property back over to the owner. Pat Tuttle, in addition to the work that she has done for 6 years in assisting the staff with staff in-service and staff learning situations, she spent the summer working with new staff, working with the staff in place during the pandemic, and pretty much by herself setting up the K2 classroom because the teacher was on her way to Black Mountain. The teacher we'd hired for the K2 classroom was on her way and was not in place at this point. All those beautiful Rubbermaid tubs represent a project that Scotty Cannon and I took on for a couple of days this summer. The storage building at the former site was filled with boxes of records, and we sorted those and decided which needed to be kept, shredded, or trashed. We were able to stay open during the pandemic. We closed for only a very brief period of time. We were approved by the state to remain open to serve children of essential workers. On the right, you see a photo of our director, Monty Wright. Monty Wright is amazing at any time because of all the things that she is able to juggle, coordinating, looking out for the children, following all the rules and regulations, because we are a 5-star facility, supervising staff. But she had even more to do during the pandemic, as you will see. We followed very carefully the CDC guidelines. We are still following those guidelines. There's a temperature check for everyone before entering the building. Each morning, the parents have to complete a health questionnaire. There's a staff questionnaire every day as well. Extra disinfecting numerous times during the day. A focus on thorough hand washing for the children and the staff. social distancing for employees, masks are worn by all employees, and we've also been assisting families with food needs through agencies like Bounty and Soul. We managed to stay open. Early in the pandemic, we did have to close twice due to COVID cases, but because of careful practices, those cases were confined to one classroom. So although we would love to have the children spending some age groups together, we are still keeping this practice in place, and that helped us to confine the cases. And again, following the temperature checks, hand washing, masks, everyone at the center working hard on that. Our numbers when we closed in March were at 70, which was capacity at the old center. During the time we were serving children of essential workers, the numbers went down to 5 to 10. Currently, our enrollment is back up to 63. That was the number on October the 14th. So what assistance did we receive during the pandemic? We are very appreciative of the plans put in place by the state of North Carolina. They provided a bonus for child care workers who stayed on the job. The state continued through August to pay the subsidies for parents who qualify for vouchers because of their income. Those subsidies continued at the rate we were paid in March. The Buncombe County Partnership for Early Childhood Education sent us supplies to deal with COVID restrictions. The Foundation for Western North Carolina awarded us a sudden urgent needs grant that has helped us to cover supplies we need for the pandemic and supplies for our new K-2 classroom, which was in response to the pandemic. We were able to receive a PPP loan and an SBA loan. And one thing that is not listed there is the food service plan that we were able to work out through the Buncombe County Food Service. At least until the end of the year, the primary school is preparing meals for the Collins Center, and they're sending over breakfast and lunch for the children. The center is continuing to supply snacks. What do we see in the future? We know that parents are fearful. They consider sending their children back. They talk about it, they think about it, and then someone who's a close friend or some family member gets COVID or is concerned about COVID and goes for testing, and so they change their minds and don't send the child back. We, of course, have parents who are out of work due to the economic situation. Staff considerations are a constant juggling act. Every time our director says that a staff member or a member's family is exposed or is tested or has a concern, then that staff member is going to have to stay home and she's going to have to work out the staff ratio and considerations. We have a center that will accommodate 170 children. We want to fill that center with 170 children. And of course, because of the size of our center, we need more students to help us maintain the center and continue to grow as we have done. Before we close, we wanted to share a few more photos from the open house. Some of you were able to attend, but many of you were not. As Linda has said, one of the wonderful things that happened was not only the new building, but all the new equipment that we were able to purchase. You see a dress-up center there on the left, the kitchen center on the right. One of the things that I love the most were the new cribs with the plexiglass ends and the plexiglass sides behind the bars, allowing the babies to see out and their staff members to see in. The photo on the right is a bigger picture of a classroom for younger children. And here's a classroom for older children as the teachers were setting up before the center opened. So we are looking to the future. We're looking to the future of our playground. We're looking to the future of growing of being able to serve more children in the Swannanoa Valley as our founders intended when they came up with the idea for the Collins Center for Children and Friends, for the Child Care Council in 1979. And we appreciate this opportunity to share our experiences and our dreams for the center with the Montreat Church. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jasmine Beach Ferrara. I'm honored to serve as a Buncombe County Commissioner representing District 2. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some updates with you about Buncombe County's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to respond to a set of questions that Ann shared with me and share some resources as I do that. And hopefully this will help share some more context about what the community response has been like from the county. So the first question is just kind of an overview and timeline of the County Commission's response to the COVID-19 crisis. County's public health staff and emergency services staff began monitoring the COVID-19 pandemic in January as it became increasingly clear to them that it would have some impact in the United States. And we started getting briefings about it in February. And by early March, it was pretty clear that this was going to be a serious issue, although I don't think any of us could have quite projected what these 6 months or more than 6 months now have been like. Buncombe County was the first county in the state to declare a state of emergency. That happened on a Thursday in early March and helped put into motion a couple of things that I'll share a little more detail about. One of those was a shared emergency operations center, or EOC, which is basically the mechanism through which multiple jurisdictions and agencies can coordinate a response to a large-scale crisis or disaster or emergency. And that helps to both address communication issues. It also helps to address funding issues and making sure that there's good coordinated responses as an issue is impacting our community. It also enabled us to kind of get an early start on one of the first steps that happened back in March, which was closures. Declaring that state of emergency basically put in motion a lot of community conversations. And one of the biggest things that happened that weekend was that a lot of local faith communities made the decision not to worship in person. It was a hard decision to make, but I think it was one thing that helped send a message really quickly how serious this was, but also helped ensure that as we were starting to see cases along the East Coast, certainly in other parts of the country, that very quickly our community was making the decision to start essentially quarantining. That weekend also, you remember that Governor Cooper closed the schools, and we saw a lot of businesses and daycares start to close as well. So we went from a Thursday, a declaration of state of emergency, to by Monday, a lot of our community was closed, and we were all at home and trying to rapidly adapt to a new reality. Since then, the county's response has really been about trying to do a couple things. One is respond to communities that are at highest risk in the moment. And that is everything from doing very coordinated work with senior centers and assisted living facilities and nursing homes across the county to ensure that they had good prevention measures and testing resources in place, knowing how vulnerable residents of those communities are. It's also meant doing a lot of targeted and intentional work with communities of color to make sure that folks have access to good information about prevention, and then also testing resources and access to treatment as that's needed. So one piece of it has really been about thinking about as this pandemic progresses, who in our community is at the highest risk around contracting and then being at higher risk for more serious cases of the pandemic. And that's one piece of the work. Another piece of the county's response has been the whole public health piece, which is really about being involved in surveillance of cases and contact tracing, so people can be informed if they have a known exposure and get access to testing. The county has also been funding and helping to administer, in some cases, testing sites. If you remember back in March and April, it was very difficult to access testing supplies, and criteria around testing were very tightly defined because of both that and shortages of PPEs and other critical supplies. In the months since then, both testing supplies and the ability to process tests and things like good masks and hand sanitizer and other protective equipment are now, there's a better supply chain for that. So we've been able to scale up access to those, but the county's played a pretty lead role in that and has partnered with everyone from the state to companies that are providing testing to neighborhood-based groups and communities to help make that happen. Another huge piece of what the county's early stage response was and continues to be is thinking about all the secondary impacts that are happening as a result of the way that our community and economy had to shut down so quickly. And people who lost jobs as a result, people who face the risk of eviction or food insecurity, people experiencing increased rates of domestic violence in the home, all kinds of issues that showed up pretty quickly as concerns and as realities in many cases. And the county had the opportunity to do everything from partnering with school systems to make sure that the provision of free meals was uninterrupted and supporting that effort, to working with local agencies, whether it was agencies that serve homeless people or unhoused people, agencies working with families impacted by domestic violence, to make sure that there were good coordination and communication in place, but also to help with some of the needs related to serving vulnerable communities during this time, including funding needs at times. And that continues to be a big part of what we're doing, what I would call the kind of rapid response component, thinking about who's at the greatest risk of contracting the virus and being impacted, and then who's at the greatest risk of things like homelessness, hunger, or some of the secondary impacts that come from the way our whole community is being impacted. But the other part of our response all along has also had to be about forecasting, thinking about not just what's happening now, but what's going to be happening in 3, 6, and 9 months. And as we think about that now, certainly we're thinking a lot about the confluence of flu season and the COVID-19 pandemic continuing and what we'll see as a result of that. We're certainly looking at the concerning increase in numbers of positive cases and increase in numbers of deaths and hospitalizations that we're seeing across the state. And I really think about this as a marathon that we're in as a community where, excuse me, unfortunately, we don't know exactly where the finish line is. And that makes it even harder. And it's about trying to find this balance of our community being safely able to reopen, which is so critical to people's mental health and well-being and quality of life, and the way our economy works, the way our educational systems work, the way pretty much everything works. It hinges on us being able to connect with each other and have an open community. And against that, the reality that we know that with that opening comes risks. And so at this point, a lot of our work continues to focus on the public education piece around social distancing, masking, hand sanitizer, people being ever vigilant about not coming into close contact with large groups of people, and being, as we head into holiday season, very conscientious about how to stay as safe as possible, particularly when spending time with friends and family members who may be in high-risk groups. This issue of how we respond to COVID-19 will remain front and center. I expect through the next calendar year in one way or another, and it impacts pretty much every other issue that we're working on in County Commission one way or another, whether that's early child education or partnerships with the local school systems or economic development issues. There's a couple other questions here about how government operations have been impacted and budgetary issues. For several months, government operations really focused on supporting the Emergency Operations Center, and many county staff were reassigned to support the work of that center. The county was the lead agency in responding to COVID-19 in Buncombe County, and part of that was a huge commitment from a staffing perspective. So we had folks who were librarians, were working as part of the EEOC response team, people from our community engagement team. We're helping to facilitate partnerships with nonprofits. the county's essential business continued during that time, but a lot had to be restructured pretty quickly. It's now gone largely back to what we are used to, and county government continues to function in the ways we're used to, with some exceptions. For instance, our county commission meetings, unfortunately, we can't have people attend in person because it's not safe to do so. So we have virtual public comment, those kinds of things. There's questions here about sort of budgetary impact, and those are great questions. I hear a lot about that. Heading into this, we immediately knew we were going to need to allocate funds from the general fund, and we did that very quickly. When we declared a state of emergency, we did an initial allocation of $500,000, knowing there would need to be more, but we wanted to make sure that the EOC could access those resources quickly, and we've made some additional allocations since then. We did see an initial drop, as you would expect, in sales tax revenue, which is one of the primary sources of revenue for the county. And we saw that happen, of course, as we saw our employment numbers unfortunately take a nosedive in the spring. The good news is all of that's starting to come back. And the other piece that's been so critical and is really a core strategy moving forward is how we leverage external funding. The county's been able to leverage approximately $15 million in a combination of state and federal and philanthropic dollars, that are focused on COVID-19 response efforts. So that's everything from CARES funding to working with partners like Dogwood Trust to fund some of the initiatives we're doing around COVID-19. So bringing in that external revenue and being very proactive about seeking it out and making sure that we're leveraging sort of every external dollar we can has been a critical piece of sort of how we're navigating this time from a fiscal perspective. The county entered this period in a very strong fiscal position with a strong, healthy fund balance, a AAA bond rating, and having had stabilized property taxes for a few years now. So we entered in strong position. I think our budget team has done a good job of forecasting. We did this budget season in June as we approved this year's fiscal budget. We did have to scale back some of the more ambitious new initiatives that we were hoping to be able to get passage and support for. My hope is as we move forward that there'll be an opportunity to revisit some of those questions. It was questions around expanding funding for early childhood education and public transportation, for instance, and affordable housing were some of the issues at the top of that list. And we just weren't in a position, we didn't have enough clear information at that point about what the months ahead would hold to move forward with those plans. But we're about to start heading into the next year's budget season, and part of our challenge will be finding the right balance between the sort of areas where it's really critically important that we continue to expand county programs and services because we know the community need is there, and also being very fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. And continuing to look at strategies where we can, again, leverage funding from different sources to respond specifically to COVID-19 issues. There's a question here about what folks can do to be engaged around these issues, specifically around COVID-19, and help our communities continue to respond. And I'll close out with that. A lot of it is about really staying abreast of what's happening and having good, clear, accurate information to inform your own choices, your family's choices, but also information you can share with other people. I'm going to do a screen share and show you a great place to get daily updates about what's happening in North Carolina, and then you can drill down into Buncombe County. This is North Carolina DHHS's COVID-19 dashboard. And as you look at it, it's updated every day at noon. The top of it shows daily cases. Unfortunately, what we see right now is that there were just over 2,900 cases, one of the highest days we've seen to date, which is very concerning information across the state. When you go down, you see the number of tests, which kind of just gives us a sense of how much testing is being conducted. The next chart is really important data. It's about hospitalizations. We currently have about 1,100 people hospitalized. And you can see in this curve, that there's a slight increase that seems to be stabilizing a bit, which would be good. There's still a lot of capacity around ICU beds and ventilators in the state. We've been very fortunate not to experience the kind of crises that other states have across the country, but this is one of the most important indicators to keep looking at. And then as you go down, you can see a county map. When you click on Buncombe, you get a little bit of data. And then if you go below there and enter Buncombe and hit, for instance, cases, you should, it sometimes takes a minute, but you should get, well, it looks like it didn't work that time. But basically, you can play around with that tool and it will give you Buncombe-specific data. So this is something, there we go. It's unfortunately 4,475 cases and unfortunately 108 deaths, really tragically, in our community. This is a place that I go every day to see what's happening. As you click on this side of the screen, you'll see that you can drill down a little bit more and get information about, for instance, testing and the percentage of positive tests, 6.9% in the state, and Buncombe County is currently at 4.3%. It's higher than it was 2 weeks ago. Once it gets to about 5%, start to get more concerned. The county has a pretty robust matrix that we're using to monitor all these different indicators and metrics that will guide decisions around whether we need to, what kind of additional steps we might need to consider in the weeks and months ahead. So staying informed about this is one of the most critical things to do, and continuing to use masks, practice social distance, be vigilant about hand washing, and as hard as it is, continue to be vigilant around not being in large group settings and being very conservative about the kind of spaces you're in with groups of people. That's one of the greatest ways we're seeing transmission happen right now. So I thank you all so much for your interest. I'm always happy to answer more specific questions. I hope this helped provide kind of an overview, and then in a few areas, a bit of a drill down on the county's response. Again, this will continue to be one of the most important issues that we work on as a county and as a community in the months and year ahead. And I am honestly really proud of how Buncombe County has come together, how many different people, how many different groups and agencies and faith communities and schools and families have kind of rolled up their sleeves and said, what can we do and how can we do it together? And while many people in our community have been impacted, whether because they've lost a loved one or they've had to shut down a family business, each one of those stories comes with a lot of heartbreak and difficulty. And at the same time, we also know that there's a lot of resilience in our community, and that continuing to be as proactive as we can and to forecast as much as we can, I think will be our best guide stars as we move through this time. So thank you all so much for your interest, and please don't ever hesitate to be in touch with questions. Take care.
All right, Cheryl, if you would just tell us about SVCM and your ministry and mission.
Well, Swana Valley Christian Ministry, of course, has been serving the Valley since 1975, and we serve the area from the VA Medical Center East, which includes Swannanoa, Black Mountain, Ridgecrest, and Montreat. And we do a multitude of things at the ministry. We, of course, do financial assistance, rent assistance, water bills, electric bills, heating assistance in the winter months. We do some medical bills, vehicle repairs, especially for our working poor, because we want them to be able to keep their jobs, or are homeless because that's their home, basically their car. And we also, people come in with different things. We've helped with some funeral expenses. We help with childcare sometimes. So we listen to our clients and we help as we can each client that comes in. We also, of course, have our wonderful clothing closet, so people can come get clothing, blankets, bedding, personal care items, shoes, all those type things are in the clothing room. And then we have an amazing client choice food pantry where clients can come in and choose off the shelf those items that they want, and they leave with the shopping cart full of food. Of course, COVID hit mid-March. which basically did not shut us down. We did not have volunteers in for a couple of weeks. And those first couple of weeks, people did panic. So we were averaging about 24 people a day with 5 staff members, all over 60. So we knew we were not going to be able to keep up that pace. My one said, I'll be flat on the floor if we keep doing this. But so we were, taking food orders and filling them and getting them out and doing rental assistance and the other assistance that the clients needed. Not in the building, we were having them call in. We shut the doors and had everybody call in request. And that works really well. We have one volunteer that has faithfully come almost every day and is at the front door, and we have a glass door so it can be open so they can see Max. But now that winter's coming, we've installed the doorbell, and last week the doorbell rang and we didn't know what it was, and it was hysterical. We were like, the volunteer and I looked at each other and we're like, what was that? but that way this winter, if a client does not have a phone or needs some assistance, we can at least, they can ring the doorbell and we will know what it is. So we have not missed a beat with COVID. We have now started letting a minimal number of volunteers in. We have one answering the phone's reception. We have one intake, and we have usually 2 or 3 in the food pantry. Each morning we prepare a food list of the items available. My food pantry supervisor comes in the evening, checks the pantry, and leaves us the list. We don't have to make changes all the time, but sometimes, whatever changes if we don't have an item or an item's added. And so the intake person or a staff person, when a client calls in wanting food, goes over that list with them to see if there's what items they want, and they can say yes or they can say no. So it's still giving them a choice. They aren't getting to pick exactly what type bean maybe they're going to get or what type cereal, but they are getting a choice of items they need. The only food list we're not doing is our TFAP food, which is the Emergency Food Assistance Program food, and we are everybody gets that if they're eligible. The list is most of the time too long for us to go through. Right now there's 18 dry items on there, plus meats and cheese and eggs and milk. So our clients are still getting a grocery cart basically full, sometimes overflowing with food to go out the door. And the community too has come together and always wanted to know our needs, and the chamber's been putting needs on their they send out an email each day. So we've been getting into the toilet paper, which you don't think about that, but we had one mom come in towards the beginning and said, how hard it is to try and teach a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old how to conserve toilet paper, and that just breaks your heart. So having toilet paper we can give them, and personal care items and laundry detergent, those are the things that cost a lot of money. And those that have animals, they're going to take care of their animals, and especially some of ours that are isolated, and that's the only thing they have contact with. Pet food's important, so we've been getting pet food in, or if we don't have it, we've been purchasing so we can give them some pet food for their animals. And then the clothing room, we did not really open much in the summer because we figured summer not as many clothes needed, but with fall and winter coming, we've started taking more clothing and are opening that. We have one volunteer in there, and if someone needs clothes, we take the list of their needs, and the volunteer picks the clothes out. Sometimes they stand there and hold up, and especially if it's a female, let's be honest, they're a little more picky, and they say yay or nay, and we're filling clothing orders that way, because especially now with sweaters, coats, those type things. In the summer, spring, summer, we were mostly doing clothing for our homeless. They, of course, regularly needed clothing. We have been blessed that the Black Mountain Coin Laundry has been letting us give vouchers to our homeless so they can go do some laundry. We are so thrilled about that. November 1st hit and it was freezing cold those first 2 nights. Sunny Moore, our homeless outreach coordinator, has done an amazing job through through his 5+ years. I think he's on his 6th year here with the homeless, getting them housed. We started feeding on Tuesdays and Thursdays on the 3rd of November. And we have 2 that we're really serving meals to right now, which is great. That means the need's not as great. One is lives outside because he does not have a car, and the other does have a car. And we know there's a few others with cars, but some of them don't come for meals. But our little one that is living out on the streets, because it was 20-something degrees November 1st, 2nd, we put him up at the Super 8. That is our game plan, is on those extreme nights or snowy nights, or looking at the forecast, if we look at the Farmer's Almanac, they're calling maybe for thunderstorms again, which we had last year, which were those were the nights the shelter wasn't opened. The last 4 years when we close the shelter, it rains. And so we've gotten a grant through the Community Foundation that we will be able to use to help us house them on those extreme nights at the Super 8. And then if that money runs out, we know we will be able to house them. We will find a way. But that gentleman also has all of his stuff finally into the Housing Authority, and we're hoping that really soon he'll have an apartment. Hope for Tomorrow is going well. Our second round of moms have begun moving out. East Haven Apartments were finished, which are the new apartments in Swannanoa, and they are an income-based housing, and 4 of our moms have gotten housing there. And that is, again, thanks to Sunny Moore working with East Haven and the Mountain Housing Opportunities and the agency they are using to rent the apartments, and advocating for these moms. The 4th one is moving in on Saturday, and Graybeard Realty's coming in with a truck and helping her get moved. So the moms are doing well. We are now refurbishing and getting those apartments ready, and we are working closely with Shannon Boyd with the Buncombe County Schools homeless liaison to find families that need to be in this program. Really looking for moms, and when we interview them, that are ready to make a change in their lives. And the moms that have successfully moved out are doing really, really great with that. And we are just so pleased and so thankful for Montreat Pres and all you do for Swannanoa Valley Christian Ministry, through volunteering, through donating, and just praying for our ministry and all we do in this community.
Speaking of that, and thank you for saying that, I was going to ask about the ongoing needs in terms of, you've mentioned some community involvement and some grants. What are the ongoing needs that SVCM has in order to be able to keep doing what it's doing in terms of finances and contributions of goods and volunteers?
All 3 of those. We need volunteers. Right now, we just need some pretty much sub-volunteers because we are very limited in the number of people we're letting in the building. We've been blessed. Right now, we have about 14 couples that are volunteering, which is great because they live together, and so they can be together, and we don't have to worry. Wonderful. But we put out our needs, and we've got an if you go to our website, we've got a new website, which is wonderful, which is svcmblackmountain.org, and also Facebook. Like us on Facebook and keep up with that. We have been really trying to put the needs out, and just also shout outs of things that are going well. Asheville Christian Academy just finished doing their annual food drive and brought in more food than they've ever brought in, which is amazing. And so just keeping up with that. We will have our Board of Directors meeting, which Grace Nichols is your representative, November 17th, and we'll be voting on next year's budget. And be in prayer for that. We, of course, have no clue what to put in the budget, but Bill Malcolm has done a great job putting one together, and we are just blessed because we know whenever there is a need in this community, if we put out that there's a need, we just sent out the letter about the homeless shelter season, not how we're going to have to do, and Sunny's been getting calls, and people are coming through to help us with the meals on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, which is a big need. But like I said, right now we only are serving 2, which we love that the numbers are small. But what our main focus right now on is making sure people do not get evicted. It would be horrible to have people not have a place to live, because we are now in the winter months. The moratoriums are coming off on these type things, and we know that we have been seeing more and more need of rental assistance. I think we did 22 in September and about 20 in 16, I think it was, maybe in October. But those are big numbers for us. We are already over what we did last year in rental assistance. Lower in a lot of the other things, but we have started getting the need for people with heating assistance. The federal program that Eblin runs, they are so backlogged. They are, when Pam Mouchow talked to them on Monday, they were still returning calls from last Wednesday, Thursday. And we had an elderly lady call in with no oil, right at, if she's not 90, she's right there at 90. How can you not give oil to that person? And so we've been doing quite a bit of oil recently. Another thing you can do is come to deck the trees this year. We are going to have the trees. There's going to be 14 at the Monte Vista starting December 3rd through January 4th, but it's become a community event. We've got 19 stores that are going to have trees in them, and all you're going to have to do is say, look for the star, and there's going to be a gold star on that business, and you can go in and they're all going to be online because we've got our new presence, and so every tree will also be online, so you can vote in your favorite tree by donating there. Christmas's program has started, what we are doing with our Johnny Rain's Christmas Cheer program for families with children. We started calling all the families that participated last year and getting their applications that way they don't have to come here. We had over 60 Hispanic families, some of them through Bounty and Soul, but a lot through our clients. And we have 2 volunteers that are calling those Hispanic families in and getting their applications done, which has been amazing. So I think today, Allie said they've already have 75 families signed up. And we just know we've been having a lot of new families. Last month it was a record number of new families, but that's what we're here for. And we want to make sure if you ever hear of a family in need or a person in need, please send them our way. There's a lot of people that do not realize we're here or do not realize what the ministry does. And so we're trying to make more of a presence so that everybody will understand that we aren't just a food pantry or clothing closet, or that we're restricted to what we do. Because of this community and your love for us and for those we serve, we can really make changes in lives.
Outstanding. Cheryl Wilson of SVCM, thank you so much for what you and this whole organization do to make human lives better and serve people in this community.
Well, we're blessed to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl and Jasmine and Linda and Carice and all the many people they represent. Volunteers, donors, staff members, board members, all the people that it takes to make these amazing and crucial ministries happen. It's an honor for Montreat Presbyterian Church and for our wider community to be involved in helping those things to happen and supporting these great and good and, again, crucial ministries. Next week, 1 week from today, November 18th, we are delighted to be welcoming the Reverend Dr. Byron Wade. He is the still new General Presbyter of the Presbytery of Western North Carolina. He'll be joining us for a fireside chat, minus the fireplace. Looking forward to it next week to have Byron Wade come and join us. Let's bow in prayer. Almighty God, thank you so much for all the gifts that you give to us and the many ways that you equip us to be your effective servants in this community and in the world. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Go in peace, friends. you.